The Michael Berry Show.
Dinesh D'Souza has just about done it all. He has taught at university. He has been the president of university. He has written books. He has debated on college campuses. He has made movies. He has appeared on television. He is a five-tool player, to be clear. Had the honor and privilege of working together with him after a movie he made that was promoted by Lionsgate that became the biggest selling movie per movie theater in the country its opening weekend. And then I had the opportunity of traveling the country with his executive producer, who had been one of the producers on Jurassic Park and a number of other projects. We went to Baton Rouge, Nashville, I think Birmingham. A whole lot of fun. Very, very influential movie. I think the last time I was in the same room with Dinesh was the premiere of a movie he did that President Trump screened for an invitation-only list at Mar-a-Lago a couple of years ago, which was pretty neat in and of itself. He is back. He's pretty good at this. He's got it down now. He's got the whole production team, and it gets a lot easier. Economies of scale, I guess, with time. It's called The Dragon's Prophecy, and Dinesh D'Souza is our guest. Or maybe he's not. Hold on.
I'm right here.
There you go. All right.
Hey.
The Dragon's Prophecy by Jonathan Cahn. What have we here?
Well, we have a different kind of project for Dinesh. My earlier films have all been in one way or another about the meaning of America. But this is a film that is based on a best-selling book. It's about October 7th. It's about Israel, Hamas, radical Islam. But it's also about biblical archaeology and biblical prophecy. So it's weaving together a tapestry of the political and the spiritual in a way I have not attempted before. And the dragon's prophecy, the title refers to a passage in the book of Revelation where a dragon, representing the devil, goes to war with a woman representing Israel, and the woman is pregnant, representing the Messiah. So right away, we're giving you a sense of what the stakes are. This is sort of the idea is that the events we're seeing in front of us are, in a way, the reverberation of a great spiritual battle that has raged from the beginning between nothing less than God and the devil themselves.
Do you think this is the times we are living, or is this a timeless piece? How much of your interest in this project is related to exactly what's going on versus more eternal concepts?
You know, it's incredibly, it's sort of both. And I didn't quite mean it that way. Some of it is that the timeless themes that I made have sort of sprung to relevance because of, for example, these ferocious battles on the right over replacement theology, and are the Jews of today really descended from the ancient Israelites? I begin the film in a very great way. There's 10 minutes of putting you right on the scene of October 7th. And you're not seeing it from the side of Israel, the victims. You're seeing it. It's almost like you're on a motorcycle with a GoPro and you're riding in with Hamas over the fence and right into the kibbutzes. Why? Because Hamas took that footage. And I've been collecting it for 2 years. I didn't use some of the most brutal footage, but I used enough that it's going to give you a riveting introduction to what it was actually like to be on the scene of October 7th. So it begins in that very kind of concrete way, and then the movie takes the more kind of wide-angled or enlarged perspective, engaging not just the political side of it, but also, you can say, the biblical side.
Why did you do that?
I moved into this film somewhat sideways. I became exposed to biblical archaeology, and I began to realize that there are figures in the Bible like Pontius Pilate or the prophet Isaiah or King David. And for thousands of years, these guys were in the Bible, but only in the Bible. You couldn't produce external proof that they even existed. But kind of in the last few decades, out of the ground in Israel have come stones and seals, clay seals and inscriptions and monuments And suddenly all these biblical figures jump out of the pages of the Bible and right into the pages of history and archaeology. And when I encountered this, I was like, why isn't this being shouted from every synagogue and the rooftop of every church? So that's kind of how I got started. Then October 7th came along, and I began to think about the connections between biblical archaeology and October 7th. And it turns out there is a connection, namely, whose land is it really? I mean, who were the original inhabitants of this land? And as it turns out, the biblical archaeology doesn't just sort of authenticate the historicity of the Bible, it also establishes definitively the presence of the Jews in that land going back really 4,000 years ago to Abraham.
Interesting. That's very interesting. You have not shied away from ecumenical subjects, but this seems to be more of a deep dive, full plunge into the matter.
It is, and yet at other times the film seems just pressingly sort of contemporary. I take a question that Tucker Carlson posed to Ted Cruz, and then I take it straight to Netanyahu, and I go, okay, Tucker Carlson asks the question, are Netanyahu's Jews really the true descendants of Abraham? What do you say? And Netanyahu goes right into it, and then it becomes a kind of a very spirited dunking on Tucker by the Prime Minister of Israel. So this part of it feels like it's ripped out of social media, ripped out of the headlines. And at other times, it feels like you're witnessing the primordial battle in heaven between God and the rebel angels. You have both those elements in the film.
It's a very interesting time. I'll wait till the next segment to ask you this question, but I want to get your thought, being a student of history to the extent that you are, which is a much deeper dive than most folks, particularly the context within which we discuss such subjects, including the rather profound. And I want to talk to the issue of this rift we've seen on the right between the sort of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson on one side, and then, say, the Douglas Murrays and a number of others on the other side, because I think this is going to get much uglier before it gets better. And I don't think it's necessarily unhealthy to air things out. This concept of unity is overrated, but I'd be curious to get your feedback on that. Coming up.
The czar of talk radio, The Michael
Dinesh
Berry Show.
D'Souza is our guest. The book, The Dragon's Prophecy by Jonathan Cahn. It is now a project that began limited release yesterday and then tomorrow. Is that right, Dinesh? It's streaming on Salem Now on October 9th. Can you tell me how folks can see this?
Yeah, so it's in theaters one more day, 400 theaters around the country. Go to the website, which is the Dragons, plural, the dragonsprophecyfilm.com. Put in your zip code. It'll pull up the theaters around you, playing, of course, in a whole bunch of places. And then the next day, Thursday, October 9th, it's streaming and DVD. It'll be streaming on Rumble, also streaming on Now. And again, go to the dragonsprophecyfilm.com. You can sign up for the streaming. You can order your DVDs right now. So whether you want to watch in the theater or at home, we make it easy for you.
So basically, it's foretelling or covering a dangerous force from ancient times that's now operating in the world and determining the course of world events today.
Exactly. And it also brings it right home to people, because it's saying that this isn't just about Israel or a computation of U.S. interests in Israel. We do all that. But it's ultimately about a choice that each of us has to make in this great spiritual war, kind of whose side are we on, God or the dragon? The dragon in today's world operates really, I would say, through two platoons. On the one hand, the Islamic jihadis, and on the other hand, the cultural left. And the weird thing is that these two groups seem very distant from each other. They don't have the same goals. They cannot easily inhabit each world. And yet, they are joined at the hip. They march together at Columbia University, and it's because they have the same targets. They hate the same people. They hate Israel, they hate the West, they hate the Christians. And so kind of the message of the film is, all right, we now understand who the forces of the dragon are. Well, why don't the Jews and the Christians, why don't the Christians and Israel come closer together? Because we are the platoons of the other side. And that's the way that the film kind of lays it out to give people a kind of clear sense of what the configuration of forces are on both sides.
Did a 3,000-year-old mystery foretell the invasion of Israel by Hamas? And if so, in your opinion, how close did it get to that?
Well, I would put it this way. It's not so much that it was foretold 3,000 years ago. It's that when you look at October 7th and the war, you can see the eerie parallel between today's events and what happened between the ancient Israelites and the Philistines 3,000 years ago. Now, first of all, the Philistines, the Palestinians, that is the same name. It's the same word transported through history. But the point Jonathan Cahn makes, and this is where his argument really takes off, is he says that the tactics are the same. So to give an example, there's the biblical hero called Samson. He represents the strength of Israel. And Samson is captured by the Philistines. They blind him in much the same way Israel was, quote, blinded on October 7th. The Bible says they dragged him, Samson, to Gaza. Gaza is mentioned in the Bible. The Philistines control the area that we now call the Gaza Strip. And the Bible says the people of Gaza came out and said, bring out Samson, take off his clothes, and bring him out so that he might, quote, entertain us. Sure enough, after October 7th, hostages and captives were taken to Gaza, stripped to the waist, paraded out while people danced around them, cheered, Allahu Akbar. And so Jonathan Cahn makes this very arresting statement. He goes, hey, Samson 3,000 years ago was in some way the first hostage of Gaza. So this is not so much a kind of forecasting as it is a observing of parallels on the largest canvas of history and theology. And I think it helps give us a much deeper insight that what we're witnessing here is not just historical events, but to some degree biblical events.
Reading about this project, it appears that there is a reference to a secret to the book of Revelation that reveals what is taking place, if not in our immediate time, then certainly in this era. Is that right?
Well, I think a lot of it can be connected to this very interesting structure right in the middle of Jerusalem called the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is sort of the retaining wall. That's where the Jews pray. But that is the site of the original Temple of Solomon. And later, of course, reconstructed under Herod. That's the place where when Jesus' parents lost him, they found him in the temple. It's that temple. Now, very interestingly, that temple doesn't exist anymore. And sitting right on top of that is you could call it an Islamic Dome of the Rock adjoining the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And so it's almost as if the dragon, the devil, has decided to occupy himself the holiest site in Judaism and Christianity. Now, the Bible seems to forecast, it's a little murky, but that we know we are in the last days when essentially the temple is rebuilt. And there are actually some Jews, serious Jews in Israel, who think that not only should the temple be rebuilt, but rites and sacrifices, including the sacrifice of so-called red heifers, need to be resumed in the temple after thousands of years. And I found those red heifers in Shiloh in the middle of Israel, and so they're in the film. So this is a way in which the film doesn't try to make definitive pronouncements, but it just teases the issue of biblical prophecy, asking the question, could it be that we're seeing some signposts that we are in the last age?
It's an interesting consideration, not one that I've given a lot of time to, but I know many, many people do. I've got about a minute left. What do you make on purely current events of the split between sort of Tucker and Candace Owens on one side and a number of folks on the right with regard to the Jewish question, the Israel question?
We should do a show on this or do it in more length, but I'll just say very briefly that the ultimate issue is, can the New Testament be severed from the Old? Has the New Testament replaced the Old? Has the New Covenant somehow canceled out the Old? Does this mean that we don't have to pay any attention to, like, creation, Genesis 1, Abraham, the Exodus, Moses, the Ten Commandments, the Hebrew prophets? To me, this is such an outrageous sort of betrayal of Christianity. This is not some like denominational argument about replacement theology. It's about people who are essentially saying that when Jesus came, everything that happened before him is obsolete. That was certainly not Jesus' own view.
It will be a conversation we have at another time. The Dragon's Prophecy. Dinesh D'Souza, thank you, good sir.
Thank you.
It's Ramon, the king of ding. And this other guy, Michael Berry.